And that's how I keep people involved in the project, is I send out information and newsletters about the arachnology program at the museum. So that's kind of an overview of the project itself. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of spiders. So what are spiders? Spiders are the lions and tigers of the world of creepy crawlies. A couple of years ago, and they're primarily predators of arthropods, of insects, mostly insects. And a couple of years ago, some colleagues estimated that the worldwide population of spiders is responsible for eating 400 to 800 million tons of prey annually. That's extraordinary. That's a lot of insects that spiders are eating. So they are critically important components of terrestrial habitats, terrestrial environments, terrestrial ecosystems worldwide, except Antarctica. But everywhere there is land masses, you will find spiders. They're very common everywhere in the world, and they're eating lots of insects. An arachnologist by the name of William S. Bristow in the early 1900s once estimated that a 1 acre field could house about a 250,000 individual spiders. And if you've ever seen a scene like this, where late in the summer, early in the fall, when the baby spiders are dispersing through a process called ballooning, where they fly through the air on a little line of silk, and the silk gets caught in fields, and the fields become covered with gossamer silk, with spider silk, it's not hard to imagine that 250,000 might be pretty close to accurate. There really are spiders everywhere. There are spiders in our homes, outside of our homes. And for the most part, and I'll talk a little bit about spider venom later, but they're benign. They're not after us. They're not going for our jugulars. They're evolved to take down insects. So to understand spiders, you have to sort of think like a scientist. And scientists love to organize life on Earth into different categories called taxonomic categories. And these taxonomic categories, from most inclusive to least inclusive, are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And as of this week, spiders, not just as of this week, but spiders are classified in the kingdom Animalia. Spiders and their relatives are in the kingdom Animalia. So they're animals like we are. They're in a huge group called the phylum Arthropoda. And arthropods include anything with an exoskeleton, an outside skeleton, and jointed legs. So that huge phylum includes not just the class Arachnida, where we find spiders, but it also includes insects, crustaceans, millipedes, centipedes. Those are all different classes in the phylum Arthropoda. Within that big phylum, we find the class Arachnida, and the class Arachnida includes 12 different orders. Within the class Arachnida, one of those orders is the order Araneae. Those are the spiders. And as of this week, there were 119 families of spiders, over 4,000 genera, that's the plural of the word genus, over 48,000 described species. And I say as of this week because there are more species of spiders being discovered every single year, everywhere on Earth. So this is only a fraction of the true species diversity of spiders that exist on Earth. Now let's take a closer look at that class Arachnida, not just the order Araneae, but all the other orders in the class Arachnida. So this order, the class Arachnida, includes the order Scorpiones, the order Araneae, the spiders, scorpions. It includes an order called the Amblypygi, or the tailless whip scorpions, even though they're not scorpions. It includes the order Thelephonida, or vinegaroons. It includes daddy longlegs in the order Piliones. It includes camel spiders, which aren't spiders, they're in their own order, in the order Stolofugi. It includes pseudoscorpions, and and acari, mites and ticks, are in the class Arachnida, as well as a couple of tiny little arachnid groups, Schizomata and Palpigrades. There are well over 100,000 species of arachnids if you include all of those orders. There are over 48,000 described species of spiders, and yet there are fewer than 600 professional arachnologists worldwide studying this incredibly diverse group of animals, which is one reason why citizen science projects like my Colorado Spider Survey are so beneficial, because it gets people excited about this group. It gets more people looking at them, hopefully more people studying them. And over the years, I have recruited people into the project who have gone on to become professional arachnologists. So this project is a way to get people pulled into the field of arachnology. And some of the other factoids I have here are just kind of fun. Some of the popular groups of non-arthropod animals, like, I don't know, birds and mammals. Birds, there's maybe a few over 10,000 species of birds worldwide. There's only about 5,400 species of mammals worldwide. You kind of wonder why people bother with those minor groups when they could be studying something really interesting like arachnids. And yet there are too many ornithologists and birders to count, too many mammalogists to count. Just in the Society of American Society of Mammalogy alone, there are almost enough members to study every single species of mammal on Earth. So we need more people going into arachnology. All of these arachnids that I just showed pictures of, all of this diverse group of arachnids that you see on the screen, most likely evolved from a common ancestor. And that ancestor may have been similar to something like what you see on the screen here, Eurypterid. Eurypterids were marine chelicerates, marine arachnid-like animals that were giant predators swimming around in the ancient seas between 460 and 260 million years ago. And some of them were giants. They grew up to 9 feet long. They were eating whatever they wanted to, but they're oftentimes called sea scorpions because they superficially look like scorpions. And some of the later fossil eurypterids and early fossil scorpions look very similar to one another. So we believe, arachnologists hypothesize, that all those orders of arachnids arose from a common ancestor, some marine group that probably moved and made that transition into land and then diversified into all those orders that I just showed pictures of. So some of those orders, if we look at the class Arachnida and all of those different arachnid groups, they have several characteristics in common. One of the characteristics is that they all have 4 pairs of walking legs. They all have, for the most part, all have 2 body segments, the cephalothorax and the abdomen, the head region and the abdomen. The head region is called the cephalothorax. They have a pair of front appendages called pedipalps. So all arachnids have 4 pair of walking legs. They have a pair of front appendages called pedipalps. They have 2 body parts. Sometimes those body parts are fused into one, and we'll talk about that in a second. They also share, so these 4 walking legs, they are also predatory animals. So for the most part, they are obligate predators, eating primarily insects. This is an amblypygid or a tailless whip scorpion. We can see that in this case, the pedipalps, instead of being pincher-like, like we saw with the scorpions, the pedipalps are very spiny looking. But they have 1, 2, 3, 4 pair of legs. The first pair of legs are very long. They're called antenniform legs. These animals have very poor eyesight, and these very long antenniform legs are covered with sensory setae. So they're moving around the environment, constantly moving those antenniform legs in front of them, kind of like insects use their antennae. But here again, we see those 2 major body parts, cephalothorax and abdomen. Here's the vinegaroons in the order Thelaphonida. Vinegaroons, 2 major body parts, cephalothorax, abdomen, 4 pair of walking legs, 1, 2, 3, 4 antenniform legs that they use, kind of like amblypygids as antenna. Pedipalps, they're kind of spiny for prey capture. They're called vinegaroons, these animals are, these arachnids, because at the base of this whip-like tail, they have a gland that produces concentrated acetic acid or vinegar. And if something attacks the animal, this is the kind of common attack posture, then they can use that whip-like tail to aim the gland, hopefully at the face of whatever is attacking it. So you get this whiff of vinegar. If you're like an arachnologist trying to take a picture, you get a whiff of vinegar in your face. One of the arachnid groups that I do a lot of research on is the order Solofugi. These are also called camel spiders, wind scorpions. They're not spiders, they're not scorpions. They are in the class Arachnida, but they're in their own order. And with the Solofugi, You see the two major body parts, cephalothorax, abdomen. And in this case, it's very clear to see the jaws. So the jaws in this group are huge and very muscular, and these animals tear their prey apart. But these are the jaws. These chelicerae are common to all the different orders of arachnids. So they're all called chelicerates because they all have this common characteristic. Order pseudoscorpions, this is another group of arachnids, another order of the class Arachnida. Here we have pincher-like pedipalps, 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of legs, 2 body parts. Chelicerae, the jaws called chelicerae. Daddy longlegs are interesting. This is another order in the class Arachnida, and this is a female daddy longlegs. I took this picture in Trinidad, not Colorado, the country. And with daddy longlegs, you have a fusion of those 2 body parts into one. So it appears as if the Opiliones or the daddy longlegs only have 1 body part, but they still have the 4 pair of walking legs. They still have pedipalps. They still have the jaws called chelicerae. This is a female guarding her eggs, and a few little baby Opilionids have hatched out. There's a very common myth out there that the most poisonous spider on earth is the daddy longlegs, but the fangs are too small to pierce human skin. Wrong on so many counts. Daddy longlegs are not spiders, as you just learned. They're a different order in the class Arachnida. They do not have fangs. They do not have venom. They're not venomous at all. In fact, in this group, we veer away from the characteristic of being an obligate predator because a lot of Opiliones are more scavengers than they are predators. They can also take down live prey, but they can also just scavenge freshly dead meat. And the order Acari is another order in the class Arachnida. Acari includes mites and ticks. And here again, we see a variation of the arachnid theme of the class Arachnida characteristics, because instead of 2 body parts, they're fused into 1. Instead of being obligate predators, some Acari are predators. Some mites and ticks are parasites, ectoparasites living on other organisms. Some of them are living on plants and will feed on the fluid of the plant. So they have a whole variety of different lifestyles. But here's a summary of some of the generalized arachnid characteristics that are common to all those different orders of animals that are in the class Arachnida. So we see for most of the orders, we see 2 body parts, cephalothorax and abdomen. Some exceptions, the exceptions being Opiliones and Acari, but for all of them, we see 8 legs. For all of these orders, none of them have antennae, which is very different than all the other classes in the phylum Arthropoda. So insects have antennae, crustaceans have antennae, millipedes, centipedes have antennae. This is the only class in the phylum Arthropoda that does not have antennae. All the arachnids have front appendages called pedipalps. They all have mouth parts called chelicerae. Most of them have external digestion. There are some exceptions. Most of them have an obligate predatory lifestyle, and most of them have indirect sperm transfer. What that means is that the male arachnids, for the most part, there are some exceptions, but mostly lack a penis or a direct intromittent organ that they can use that's associated with their genitalia that they can use to inseminate the female. So we see some crazy sexual copulatory behaviors in arachnids, and I'll talk about that at the end of today's lecture for spiders. So now let's focus in on spiders and see where they fit into these common characteristics in the class Arachnida. Well, with spiders in the order Araneae, we see 2 body parts, cephalothorax and abdomen. We see 4 pairs of legs, 8 legs. We see that they lack antennae. They have pedipalps that are used for sperm transfer. So again, they lack an intromittent organ. They don't have a penis. The males don't have a penis, but they have specialized pedipalps that they use for sperm transfer. And I'll show that at the end of the lecture. They have mouth parts called chelicerae. With spiders, however, the chelicerae are tipped with hollow fangs. And those hollow fangs are linked up to a venom gland inside the cephalothorax. So that's what they use. They use their fang-tipped chelicerae to envenomate their prey. And I'll talk about that next. They also have external digestion, and we'll talk about spider digestion in a moment. They're all predators. All spiders are predators, and all spiders have silk glands and use silk for a variety of different purposes. So silk is a very important part of a spider's life. So let's take a closer look at some of these characteristics. First of all, since I already mentioned how important spiders are as predators, let's talk about how they feed. So what spiders do is when they find an insect prey, and spiders evolve to as predators of insects, not typically predators of vertebrates. So their venom that they evolved is specialized for taking down and killing and paralyzing insects for the most part. And I'll talk about what few species exist that have venom that's harmful to vertebrates or to humans. But what spiders do is when they encounter an insect prey, they have to take it down, they have to kill it, they have to somehow immobilize it. And most spiders do that using their very sharp, pointy fangs. So we're looking at the underside of the cephalothorax in this image. We're looking at the chelicerae that are tipped with fangs. The fangs are hollow. They lead to venom glands that are either in the chelicerae themselves or in the cephalothorax. So the spiders will use those fangs to puncture holes into the hard exoskeleton of their insect prey to inject the venom. Now, some spiders also use silk to immobilize prey. So if it's a dangerous prey, they will turn around and they'll throw silk at the insect prey. So they use a combination of venom and silk to immobilize the prey. Once the prey has been immobilized, then what the spider does, and this is another view underneath the cephalothorax. So if you look directly underneath the cephalothorax, the head region of a spider, you will see three hard plates called the endites and the labium. And in between these three plates, you see the opening to the mouth. The plates themselves are bordered with hair-like setae. And those hair-like setae act as filters. Because the way spiders feed is they have a very muscular stomach. So they have their stomach, which is in the cephalothorax, is surrounded by musculature. And what the spiders do is once they've poked holes into the body of their prey and injected the venom and immobilized the prey, they will then squeeze their stomach, and through their mouth, which is right here, they will egest or vomit a mixture of digestive enzymes. Those digestive enzymes get into the body of the prey through the holes they've just poked into the body using their fangs. And some spiders will tear the prey apart a bit to create more openings for those digestive enzymes. So those digestive enzymes get into the body of the prey, pre-digest, pre-liquefy that tissue. Now they can't do it all at once. So feeding in spiders is a series of vomit enzymes, suck the nutrients, vomit, suck, until they have sucked out all of those pre-digested nutrients that are already pre-liquefied, which sounds kind of gross, but it's actually quite efficient. The hair-like setae that surround the plates, the endites, are filtering out any chitin, any exoskeletal bits that are indigestible. And what you'll see spiders do periodically is they move their pedipalps or their legs underneath their cephalothorax to wipe away any of that garbage that has accumulated, that has been filtered out. Now, I said that it sounds gross, and there is a misperception that spiders, when they stick their fangs in, the fangs have the digestive enzymes. That is not correct. The fangs are used only to inject the venom. The digestive enzymes come out of the mouth, totally separate from the fangs. So here we see that venom gland that I talked about in the cephalothorax of the spider. Here is the orange is what I want you to pay attention to here. So we're looking inside the body of the spider. Here is the sucking stomach that's surrounded by muscles. But look at that digestive system. There are what are called digestive diverticula or digestive tubes, all these yellow tubes that expand throughout the body of the spider. So when it sucks in that pre-digested material, those nutrients are passed directly to the tissue and get delivered exactly where the nutrients are needed. So they don't have to expend any more internal energy on digestion like we do. So when we eat, we have to chew our food. The amylase enzymes in our mouth begins the digestive process. We swallow it. Digestion continues in our stomach. That is metabolically very expensive. And if you're like me, that means that you get hungry on the clock about every 4 hours. But with spiders, because they have done all the digestion external to the body, once those nutrients get inside the body and get distributed, they really don't have to expend any more energy on digestion. It's already pre-digested, which means that spiders can go a really long time without food. They just have to take in a good meal once in a while, and then they're fine for a very long time, because they have very low metabolic rate. They are mostly sit and wait predators, so they're not even expending a whole lot of energy on prey capture. Now, the other thing that I mentioned that all spiders have in common is the use of silk. Spiders have silk glands in their abdomen. They have upwards of 7 different kinds of silk glands that can produce upwards of 7 different kinds of proteinaceous silk. Spider silk is made out of different kinds of protein. The silk is stored in those 7 silk glands in liquid form, and the spiders can squeeze that liquid silk out of the abdomen into structures called spinnerets, which are on the tail end of the spider, on the butt end of the spider. So here are the spinnerets that I'm pointing to here. And on the surface of the spinnerets are tiny little silk spigots. So the spider will squeeze the silk out of the silk glands, it's liquid silk, into these tiny little tubes, and the silk emerges from the spinnerets through these tiny little silk spigots. As it is squeezed out of the spider, most of the water is reabsorbed into the body so that spiders don't lose too much water when they are producing the silk. But the silk still emerges from the spider's body in liquid form as a droplet. It turns into solid spider silk when it is put under some tension. And that can happen when the spider literally pulls the silk out of its own abdomen, or it can happen when it releases a droplet and a breeze pulls that droplet away from the spider's body. That's enough tension to change the matrix of protein from liquid to solid. Or it can happen when the spider attaches the droplet to a surface and liquid to solid. Spider silk is incredibly strong. It is stronger by unit weight. It's stronger by unit weight than steel, and it's very elastic. And if you think about it, with a spider web, it has to be both strong and elastic in order to capture a fast flying insect, so that the silk is strong enough not to just break upon impact, but elastic enough that it has a little bit of give. So it's this kind of holy grail of material science, spider silk is, because of the unique properties. Spiders use their silk for a whole variety of different purposes. So when a spider is moving through the environment, like this jumping spider is, it is continually leaving a drag line of silk behind it, so that if a breeze were to blow this spider and topple it off the leaf, the drag line silk would protect it, would act like a bungee cord and protect it from plummeting to its death. Spiders protect their reproductive investment in silk. So this is a female spider right here. This is a female in the family Uloboridae. And these 3 structures are her silken egg sacs. So when a female is ready to reproduce and to produce her eggs, she will create a little basket of silk, lay her eggs in that silken basket, and then cover the eggs with more silk. And that silken egg sac protects the eggs from egg sac parasites and predators. It also protects the eggs from drying out. It allows spiders to overwinter in the egg sac stage. So a lot of spiders are producing their egg sacs this time of year, and those eggs will be well protected against freezing inside that silken egg sac. Spiders that live underground, like this is the burrow of a wolf spider in the family Lycosidae, and those burrowing wolf spiders will line their underground burrows with silk and extend silk lines out of that burrow that act as trip lines. So if an insect was walking past this spider burrow, the spider inside the burrow would feel the vibrations and would be able to rush out and grab the insect. This is a very cool burrow. I just show this because I love these pictures. This is a burrow of a Tanizid spider, a trapdoor spider, in a family that we won't find. We actually have one of these that lives in the western slope, one species of trapdoor spider. But these animals are tarantula-like spiders that build underground silk-lined burrows, and they build a wafer-shaped door that they hold closed. This is also lined with silk. They hold the door closed by hooking their fangs in the door and pulling down on the door. And then they also have silk lines, like I just talked about, that extend out of the burrow. If they feel the vibration of an insect walking past their burrow, they will throw that door open very suddenly and rush out and grab whatever it is, including if it's the, say, I don't know, the camel hair brush of a female arachnologist who was teasing the spider. And that's how I got these pictures. That spider rushed out so fast, I screamed like a girl, threw the brush behind me, but I did manage to get a picture of the spider. So this is the owner of that burrow. Now, this is a little factoid that I like to point out with this picture. You see this dimple in the cephalothorax of this spider? That dimple marks where internally the muscles of the sucking stomach are attached. I think that's kind of cool. A lot of spiders will use their silk to create retreats, silken retreats where they hide during the day. So this is a Trinidad chevron tarantula that I took in Trinidad and Tobago on a trip there. And here it's resting during the day in its silk-lined retreat. Now, let's talk about, let me see where I'm going. Oh, venom. So that next part, I wanted to talk a little bit about venom. So spiders, as I mentioned, are venomous. Almost all of them have venom glands inside their cephalothorax. I'm pointing to my neck because this is my idea of a cephalothorax. They have a venom gland inside their cephalothorax. So nearly all spiders are venomous. I'm the only professional arachnologist in Colorado. And so I get pretty much a question a day about spiders, over 300 questions a year about spiders. And a lot of them are about, I found a spider in my house, and is it poisonous? What people are really asking is it venomous? And what they're really asking is it have venom that's harmful to humans? Because the answer to the first part of the question is it venomous? Is yes. Almost all spiders have venom glands. So nearly all of those 48,000 described species are venomous. But do they have venom that's harmful to humans? Although they are voracious predators of their own prey, as we see in this picture. This is a fishing spider in the family Pisoridae. And this fishing spider monitors water bodies like lakes and rivers with its front legs, feeling for the vibration of little fish or mostly insects that are swimming below it. And if it feels those vibrations, it dives down, drags the prey above the water and begins to feed. So they are voracious predators of their own prey, be they insects or tiny little vertebrates. But very few spiders worldwide have venom of medical importance to humans, because the venom of spiders evolved to take down and to affect the physiology of an insect, of arthropods, not of vertebrates. There are a few exceptions. In this region of the country, the only spider that has venom of medical importance to humans that we find in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, is the western black widow in the family Theridiidae. We have one species of black widow in this region, Latrodectus hesperus, the western widow. It has the classic hourglass on the underside of the body. Females have a shiny black dorsal part of the body. Males, adult males and immatures have other color markings on the top part of the body, on the dorsal part of the body, but everybody, juveniles, males and females, all have the red hourglass or the red marking underneath. Now, it's just evolutionary bad luck that these animals, the black widows, have a component of the venom that is harmful to humans and to other vertebrate groups. So it has something called latrodectin. Now, black widows are very timid, rarely bite only when seriously provoked. For example, if it's hiding beneath your flower pot and you don't know it's there and you accidentally press down on the black widow, it may bite you just to get away because some giant is trapping it. But rarely do bites occur. When bites of black widows do occur, oftentimes they're dry bites or result in no symptoms. I've been bitten by a black widow once when I was handling it for a public program, and she just gave me a little warning nip. She didn't really envenomate me. The tip of my finger was just mildly sore for 2 days, and that was it. But when these black widows do envenomate humans, the component of the venom that messes with our body is a neurotoxin. So there won't necessarily be a lot of pain at the bite site, although you'll know you were bitten. I have never met a person who was bitten by a black widow who did not know immediately that they were bitten. But the painful symptoms will start to appear within about a half an hour of the bite. And symptoms of black widow envenomations include pain throughout the body, particularly in the stomach. It feels your stomach muscles start to tighten up. Pain in the lymph nodes, pain in the joints, facial contortions, sweating, hypertension, increased heart rate. Those are all classic symptoms of latrodectus or black widow envenomation. Untreated, those symptoms will resolve for most people within 48 hours. But apparently the pain can be excruciating. There is antivenin available. And if you have questions about black widow antivenin, I can talk about that more in the Q&A section. But black widows, like I said, very timid. Antivenin is available. You're not going to die from the bite, but you might wish you were dead. That's how painful it can be. And they are dirt common in Colorado. I have black widows. Well, I happen to have one in a jar in my kitchen, but I have black widows in my garage. I have black widows outside my house. So do you. We all do. They are just very well adapted to living in very dry environments. They get most of their moisture probably from their food, so they don't need a lot of environmental moisture, which I think is one reason why black widows are very, very, very common in Colorado. So most people know what black widows look like. They know to be aware of them. They know that they can be dangerous to humans. They know to avoid them. They know to get them out of the house. Of those 300 questions I get a year, I get very few about black widows, except the occasional question from an arachnophile who wants advice on how to keep their pet black widow happy. But what I get a lot of questions about is this animal. This is the brown recluse in the family Curator. And these are also called the fiddleback spiders because of this marking on the back of the cephalothorax that looks like a fiddle. I get a lot of questions about cicariids and about recluse spiders. And the way you tell a recluse spider from anybody else is not by this fiddle-like marking, because to most arachnophobes, every spider they see has a marking like this on it. No. What you want to do is you want to look at the eyes, because most spiders have 8 eyes. These animals have only 6, arranged as 3 pairs around the cephalothorax, a pair, a pair, a pair. So they only have 6 eyes. So I get lots of phone calls and emails from people saying, I think I have brown recluse in my house. And I say, no, you probably don't, because they're not native to this region of the country. They're very infrequent visitors here, and they very rarely get established for any length of time. And they say, well, no, it has this fiddle marking on the back. And I said, well, that's not the way to tell. The way to tell is look at the eyes, because they don't have 8 eyes, they have 6 eyes arranged as 3 dyads. And of course, the response is, what are you kidding? I'm not going to get that close. But that is the way to tell recluse spiders from everybody else. This is the distribution map of all the spiders in the genus Loxosceles, including Loxosceles reclusa. So we have several different species of this genus of recluse spiders throughout North America, throughout the US. They all have very similar venom components, but you'll notice that none of them are native to the Western states. That doesn't mean they don't sometimes get introduced from areas of the country where they are common, but we have historical records from a warehouse in Denver, a house in Lamar, a house in Pueblo, a colleague in Wyoming who had a small population there. But those populations that get established never spread from that point location, and they die off after a very brief period of time, usually maybe at the most 1 or 2 years, because we are just the wrong climatic condition for the establishment of populations of recluse spiders. The reason recluse spiders, and the reason I talk about these, even though they're not found here, is because they have this notoriety. Recluse spiders can cause bites from them. Most bites from recluse spiders are asymptomatic. But when you do get envenomated by a recluse spider, the component of their venom called sphingomyelinase D breaks down. It's an enzyme that breaks down the component of our cell walls in our own tissue, our own flesh. We have sphingomyelin in our tissue cell walls. So the sphingomyelinase D that's in their venom breaks down that component of the tissue cell walls and causes the tissues right around the bite site to explode and to degrade. So the bites from recluse spiders can cause usually small necrotic lesions, these open wounds that take a really long time to heal. They have absolutely nothing to do with bacteria, nothing to do with infections, because it's all about this enzyme that is a component of the venom that is breaking down the tissue. Sometimes the envenomations will cause a general malaise, a general feeling of being unwell, but most of the symptoms are localized right around the bite site. And there is no antivenom. Untreated, those wounds heal after a little bit of time. But people get reasonably enough freaked out when they have these necrotic lesions that don't heal. But what's important to understand is that in regions of the country, like the Western states, where no species of recluse spider is found, there are a lot of other conditions that can cause dermonecrotic lesions that have been misdiagnosed as spider bites. And probably the most common is MRSA, methicillin-resistant staph infections. These are the flesh-eating bacteria. We have had MRSA infections cause necrotic lesions, all sorts of places in Colorado, throughout the Western states, in schools, anywhere where people gather, you can get MRSA infections spread from person to person. And you can diagnose the MRSA infection correctly unless the doctor misdiagnoses it initially as a spider bite. Diabetic ulcers have been misdiagnosed as spider bites. Lymphoma, kind of cancer, can cause. Now, if any of those cases, if somebody develops a necrotic lesion in Colorado or the Western states, and it is misdiagnosed as a spider bite, and it turns out the person actually has lymphoma, by the time the doctors figure that out, it could be too late. So it's very important to recognize that in the Western states, spider bites are the least likely causative agent for these necrotic lesions. So that's why I talk about this at some level. So now let's talk about how to identify spiders. So I've given you kind of an overarching understanding of spider biology, of silk, of venom. So how do they catch prey? Well, when most people think about spiders, they're thinking about Charlotte's Web, about spiders that build these lovely round orb webs. But in fact, a lot of spiders do not use silk, or do not use webs, rather, to capture their prey. Most of them do use silk, but a lot of them do not use webs to catch their prey. So for example, a non-web building kind of spider is the family Lycosidae. And in this series of slides, what I want to do is try to impart the family name of the spider group with the common name and with some of the characteristics you can use to field identify whether you're looking at a wolf spider or a jumping spider or an orb weaver or what have you. So a non-web building spider is the family Lycosidae, and all family names in the animal kingdom end in IDAE. That's one little clue you can use to identify a family name. So the Lycosidae is the family name for wolf spiders. Wolf spiders are active hunters. They're found in Colorado, they're found in the plains, building silk-lined burrows. They're found where I live, near water, or in silk-lined burrows. And wolf spiders they have fairly good eyesight. So they're active usually in the evening or at night. They have 8 eyes, but they have 4 big eyes arranged like the corners of a square on the very top of their cephalothorax, and then 4 little eyes in the very front of their cephalothorax to make 8 eyes total. They use their eyes to locate the movement of prey and can rush at that prey and capture it. So one way you can tell wolf spiders is that they're moving around on the ground, they're active at night, they have this very unique eye pattern. If you see spiders with this particular eye pattern, that is a wolf spider in the family Lycosidae. In this time of year, or maybe a little bit earlier, the females start to produce their silken egg sac. And the wolf spider females will attach their egg sacs to their spinnerets, will drag that egg sac around with them. And when the babies hatch out of the eggs, the female can feel the movement of the babies. She'll turn around, she'll tear a hole in the silken egg sac, and all the babies will climb up and hitch a ride on her back. So the other way to tell wolf spiders when you're out in the field and looking for spiders is if you see a spider with a little white silken ball attached to its rear end, or if you see a spider that is covered with little tiny baby spiders, that's a wolf spider. Any of those characteristics, eye pattern, dragging the egg sac behind them, being active on the ground, especially in moist areas, having babies on the back. Those are all characteristic of that family. Jumping spiders is another group of non-web building spider. Jumping spiders also have very unique eye pattern. Jumping spiders are active during the day. They have extremely keen eyesight. They can see, they have color vision. They have 8 eyes arranged like a U around the cephalothorax. The front 2 eyes are enormous. And they're oftentimes very colorfully patterned bodies because they do see in color. So they oftentimes use those color markings for courtship. So the males will have these hairdos and they'll have bright colors and they're trying to attract the females. They have very keen eyesight. They're active in the daytime. Any of those characteristics will tell you that what you're looking at is a jumping spider. So if you see a very brightly colored spider crawling around on your front porch or on your house that has 2 giant front eyes, it looks like it's looking at you because it is. It follows the movement of your finger, or it can follow the movement of your finger. It jumps like a cat and pounces on its prey. Any of those characteristics will tell you that you're looking at a jumping spider in the family Salticidae. Another non-web building spider group is the family Thomisidae, the crab spiders. And crab spiders are sit and wait predators. They also have unique eye pattern. They typically have 8 eyes arranged in 2 rows, and the lateral eyes are arranged typically on tubercles, kind of stuck out from the cephalothorax. They are called crab spiders because their legs are arranged side to side like a crab, and they can scuttle side to side. And crab spiders are sit and wait. A lot of them will sit and wait and pounce on pollinators that are coming to flowers. So you'll see Thomicid crab spiders sitting on flower heads waiting for pollinators to visit. They will grab those pollinating insects with their giant spiny front pair of legs. We'll grab it, we'll envenomate it, we'll begin to feed on it. And some crab spiders can change their color to match the flower background that they're sitting on. I think that's kind of cool. Another non-web building spider that's very common in Colorado are the louse hunters in the family Dysderidae. Bright red cephalothorax, grayish yellow abdomen, orange legs, very unique color pattern, 6 eyes arranged in a very tight little semicircle, giant chelicerae, giant jaws and fangs that stick right out in front of the body. These are called louse hunters because they feed on roly-polies, which this is a species, Dysdera crocata, in the family Dysderidae, that we have here in Colorado. You'll see this in your mulch pile. You'll see this underneath your flower pots. Anywhere where you see or find isopods of roly-polies, you'll find Dysderids, because they specialize on feeding on roly-polies. And this species was introduced from Europe, where they happen to call roly-polies woodlice, hence louse hunter. They are totally harmless venom to humans, but deadly for isopods. Here's a cool factoid for this picture. You see the shadowy image here? That is the spider's heart inside the abdomen. I think that's kind of cool. Now, even amongst the web building spiders that do build prey capture web, the orb weavers are just one family. So when you see a vertically oriented orb web, a Charlotte's Web of Charlotte's Web fame kind of web, that is built by spiders in the family Araneidae, the orb weaving spider family. But if you see a web like this with a platform of silk and a funnel-like retreat, that is built by spiders in a totally different family, the family Agilenidae, the funnel web spider family. Spider waits in its funnel. If it feels movement outside on this platform of silk, it rushes out, grabs it, and drags it back in. If you see a web like this in your juniper bushes, this is built by the Boland doily spider, or the grass spider family, the Linophiidae. If you go out early in the morning with the dew on your front lawn, and you see in a divot of your front lawn a tiny little spider web, that is built by spiders, tiny little spiders in the family Linophiidae, called Boland doily spiders because some of them build this bowl-like structure with the doily underneath it. Spider rests underneath the bowl and can feel vibrations from anywhere around itself. I'm going to skip that one. Now, what I do want to point out with the web builders is that with the non-web building spiders, it is oftentimes, where is the spider found? What do its eyes look like? How are its legs arranged? That will give you clues as to what kind of spider you're looking at. With the ones that do build prey capture webs, the structure of the web itself will give you a clue as to what family it's in, whether it's a Boland doily spider or an orb weaver or a funnel web spider. So now, hopefully you guys all have at your access, you have that identification guide that I sent you, that dichotomous key, because I want to just sort of start walking you through that dichotomous key. I sent a PDF to hopefully all of you, because we are going to start learning a little bit about how to use that key. And I'm just going to touch on it in today's lecture. But the very first couplet, if you turn to page 8 of that key, on page 8, you'll see couplets 1A and 1B of that spider ID document that asks you how the fangs are organized. So let's say you have a mystery spider that you collected. Take a look at the fangs, and if the fangs are parallel to one another like this, it belongs to the mygalomorph group. It's a tarantula-like spider. If the fangs or this is sort of like a garden tongs, but if the fangs are in opposition to one another, as you see in the bottom photo, that is the araneomorph group. Those are not families, those are giant groups, lineages of spiders. So mygalomorphs are tarantula-like things, and araneomorphs are everything else. Here in the Denver area, everything is an araneomorph. We don't see mygalomorphs or tarantulas until we get to the southern part of Colorado. So if you follow the araneomorph couplet, it tells you, if you say, okay, it's an araneomorph, the next couplet you get to is asking you if it has a cribellum and calamistrum, or if it's an E-cribolate spider. So what in the world does that mean? Well, cribellum and calamistrum refer to structures right in front of the spinneret. So here we're looking at the butt end of the spider. Here are the spinnerets. This little smiley-faced flat structure is called the cribellum. This is the fourth leg of the spider, the second to last segment of the fourth leg, and this beautiful comb-like structure of setae that are curled over is the calamistrum. Cribellate spiders that have a cribellum and a calamistrum, the cribellum itself is a spinning plate that is covered with tens of thousands of individual silk spigots. So the silk droplets emerge, tens of thousands of silk droplets emerge from the surface of this cribellar plate, of this cribellum. The spider combs that silk out of the silk plate using that comb-like cribellum, or sorry, the comb-like calamistrum. So it combs the calamistrum over the surface of the spinning plate and produces a puff of silk that is itself made up of tens of thousands of individual silk lines. The cribellate silk is used for prey capture. It's used to make specialized cribellate webs, and it functions because an insect's body is covered with little hairs, hair-like setae. So when an insect flies into a cribellate web, this puff of silk tangles the insect all up in that web. Whereas ecribellate spiders do not have the cribellum or the calamistrum, so they rely on including glue droplets onto their lines of silk. So one of their silk glands will produce gluey droplets that act to hold the prey in place in the web. If you are interested in learning more about spider identification, these are the two references that I highly recommend. If you're really interested in getting these references, I have them for sale at the museum and can send you a copy. So just email me and I'll tell you how much they are. I have them for sale at a reduced price than you can get on Amazon, but you can also get these on Amazon. The Spiders of North America is an identification manual that will allow you to identify spiders down to the genus level. And Common Spiders of North America is the premier field guide to over between 400 and 500 of the most common species that are found throughout North America. Gorgeous illustrations. I highly recommend Rich Bradley's book. So the last part of my talk, I want to talk about when you're out collecting spiders, when you're looking at spiders, how do you tell whether you're looking at an adult spider or an immature spider? And the way you do that is by looking at the pedipalps. So here is an adult male spider. Adult female spiders, the pedipalps are in front of the body, just like you see here, but they're very delicate looking. Whereas with adult male spiders, they have very enlarged pedipalps. It looks like they're wearing boxing gloves. And we can see that here. So this is looking at the underside of an orb weaving spider. Here are his giant pedipalps. Very intricate structures associated with those pedipalps. So when spiders mature, when they molt to mature, when they finally go through the last molt, shedding their exoskeleton and become mature, adult females have fully developed ovaries that lead to structures on the external part of their abdomen called the epigenum. Doesn't really matter that you know that word, but that's right here. So there are structures surrounding the female's genital opening where the eggs emerge and that are linked to the ovaries called the epigenum. The male spiders, his testes are also in his abdomen, just like the female's ovaries are in her abdomen, but he has no intermittent structure. He has no penis associated with that testes. So what the male spider does is when he's mature, his testes have formed, he makes a little silken platform of silk called a sperm web. He deposits through an opening on his abdomen a droplet of sperm on that sperm web, and then he uses specialized tubes associated with his pedipalp to suck the sperm into the pedipalp, and he stores the sperm in his pedipalp. So he uses the pedipalps as sperm storage organs. When the males find females, either if she's a web building spider, he will locate her web, he will pluck her web in a species specific way. He's singing a silk song to her, a love song, saying, hey, baby, I'm interested. Are you ready? Are you interested? If she's interested, she will respond and vibrate back to him. He will then approach her on her own web and will wrap his pedipalps around her and mate with her. If it's a non-web building spider, the male spider will typically dance for the female or do some sort of vibratory signaling outside her burrow. Like a tarantula male will knock on the outside of her burrow, in a species-specific way, communicating, I'm a mate, not a meal. Are you interested? If she's interested, she comes out, and then he might do some other elaborate courtship dances, and then will ultimately approach her and wrap his pedipalp around and mate with her. The male pedipalp has structures that are very specific to the female's epigyne, to the structures associated with her genital opening. So when the male does approach the female, he uses his pedipalp to lock into place on her epigyne, allowing him to then unwind that tube and inseminate her. If he's the wrong species, that won't work. It's a lock and key mechanism. His pedipalp will not lock into place, even if he can get close enough to her to try, which usually he can't do. So there are species-specific structures associated with every single species of spider's pedipalp, and there are species-specific epigynal structures associated with the female. So species A pedipalp looks very different than species B. And that's how you can tell and identify spiders down to the species level, is by examining their pedipalps, examining their epigyne. If it's a male, you would look at the pedipalp. Female, you look at the epigyne. And in the world of spiders, I think this might explain why there are so many female arachnologists. About a third of the community is female, is because in the world of spiders, at least, females have an advantage. If there is a difference in size between male spiders and female spiders, it is almost always in favor of the female, and sometimes to an extreme degree. So this is a picture of a web building spider called Nephila or Trichonephila. And this is the female. That little puny thing, that's her male. So that means that when the male approaches the female, he is approaching a ginormous predator, and he really has to play his cards right. So he has to know how to sing to her if he's a web builder, and he has to know how to dance right if he is a non-web builder, in order for her to allow him to approach, allow him to mate with her, and allow him to get away. So I think with that, I'm going to end it with some advice. Never kill a spider. If you wish to live and thrive, let a spider run alive. Kill a spider bad like yours will be until it flies. You've swatted 53. And I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see your lovely faces. If you would, please click on your video so I can see you all. And that is the end of the lecture, and we can open it up for a Q&A. So